Hello, people. Welcome to the Free to Be Bored podcast.
Yay!
Recording in progress. That's pretty profound because it's just like it's not necessarily unsafe to fail. I feel like a good question is like what where the hell have we been? Not that probably anyone cares, but I think it's like it's a good segue.
I think so.
You want to start?
Where have we been? The last podcast was
Probably 2 months ago.
2 months ago, and it was free to be
Flaky. We have been very free to be flaky. We
Yep.
felt freedom.
This is on brand to just pop up.
Exactly.
So, we were flaky. I think we were preempting that there was a lot going on and that this might flake away and then come back, which it has. Where have I been? I've been in many new places emotionally, within my relationships, and most importantly, not most importantly, but most time spent in relationship with self, I would say. I've been in deep integration, deep integration, from the healing and the new emotional release that I received in Bali and afterwards. And with that, the more 3D day-to-day life and skills have been, the energy required for them has been funneled elsewhere. So I haven't been in a place where I wouldn't want to create a podcast necessarily, but it's definitely been in a learning space, which ready to come back here and talk about on the podcast. That's where I've been, coming out into, seeing things a slightly different way. So it was dark sometimes, fun sometimes, scary sometimes, cave, and all equally important. And here we are, feeling free to be.
There a rebranding of Louise as you come out of this dark night of the soul.
Yeah. I
Or
think,
she's a Leo rising.
yeah, this was deliberately chosen for this episode. I think there was a rejection of Leo as my rising sign. Not that we're all about horoscopes, but they're super interesting. And
I'm all about horoscopes.
here you are. We actually both are. The channel's not, but we both are. I was rejecting. I didn't align with. I couldn't see how you could go from a Pisces to developing into the traits of the Leo. But I can feel it now. And after this, like, yeah, when you go really, really deep and really, really dark, there is a rising up, and this just makes perfect sense. So yeah, a rebrand.
Oh my god, the Leo rising. I'm scared of it. I'm just like, it's my time to shine. Shut up, everyone.
Mhm. Move out of the way. Excuse me, I have a seat. Yeah, why not? And
I
that's a
mean,
bold thing.
it's like, at least we can blame it on the stars, right? It's like, it's not me. The stars are asking that. It's
Mhm.
like, I need to rise as this Leo for something to make sense for me. Whoever likes it, great. And whoever doesn't like it, great too.
It is great too. And it's still scary. And I have no idea where I'm going or what I'm trying to say or where the information is even going to come from. But we're here and we're rising. And it's scary and good at the same time. And I love all your questions directed towards me. Where have you been?
I'm good
It
at
is space
asking.
to be flaky.
I feel like I've been literally a lot of physical places. Like I've been moving from Mazunte to Mexico City to Jalapa, where my parents have been. Just I I mean, I've just been. I don't feel like I've been in such a dark night of the soul or rising time of my life. I feel pretty stable in my Virgo rising. Feel like a good connection. uh, but I've been in, let's call it creator mode. I've been trying to create something which is like a very exciting yet very scary at the same time type of thing. So I guess like I've been like navigating those two things, like the excitement of like, oh, I'm doing this, it's happening, and just like seeing all the potential of life. And then just like moving back into the fear and just be like, oh, what is that? It's like, oh, why, how is this gonna work? So maybe, yeah, maybe I've just been into a materializing time of my life and just like letting things be as they are. Like, and in that I mean, it's not like not moving forward with my life, but it's just like exactly that, like moving forward from an allowing, just like not everything has to be perfect as you would want it to be, as your Virgo would want it to be, because it's just like like I've literally noticed how paralyzing it was to be associated with anything that I considered less than perfect. And I
Mhm.
know like it's already part of the work, like at least the internal work I've been doing with like just stepping on onto the podcast, just being like sometimes I say really stupid stuff and it's out there for whoever wants to pay attention, but still just like this self censorship just coming through and just be like, yeah, I've been navigating a lot of freeze around it. Just like really seeing how like it goes into so much overwhelm that I'm just like, well, then maybe I just don't do anything. And then just like the excitement coming and it's like, no, there's you have to do things, like do this, and then just seeing everything that I have to do and be like, I don't want to. So that's where I've been. I've been places inside and outside. I did also a small retreat. That one was helpful. And I mean, it was the end of the year, right? So it tends to be quite social. So I feel like the rest of the year for me was like very much like not like in solitude in a way. Like I was not like very socially inclined, just spending a lot of time in my house, just like watching my videos, learning my stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, well, it's that time of the year where sometimes you're not home for the entire day, and it's okay as long as it's for a small period of time. I cannot sustain that type of living for too long. But
What's different about this time round in enduring the critique
you mean with this new course?
creation? Mhm.
I think actually, in a way, like it does soften the blow. The fact that, for instance, in the podcast we're doing it together, so it just feels like okay, like it's a co-creation. So, and it's not like in a messy way of like whatever, like Louise fucks up or it's her fault or I'm like I don't know, like whatever stories my mind could go into. But yeah, there's something about doing it in a team that certainly changes the dynamic of like the dynamics of self-perception, I
Mhm.
think. And probably it is also just with the fact that you're already there witnessing me and we're friends and we support each other, right? So that like already like softens my nervous system. But sometimes when it's just me having to be my own cheerleader or my own support, like that gets hard. And like one of the things that I was doing is like this course around the nervous system that I've been wanting to create. I mean, not for that long. I was just like, let's do it. And I asked my dad as you know, to help me record it. And I think like it was literally the only reason why I managed to do it was because he was kind of my witness. He was like a tough witness, right? Because it's not like he's all like, yay, go Jimena. I mean, he is, but he isn't. I could also see his face sometimes of like, you are saying that. Like, you want to like come across as Mrs. Compassion. That like, I know you, like you are fucked up. Like I've seen you when you're angry. I've seen how judgmental you are. I've seen how intolerant you are. And I was just like, that was like sometimes a lot to handle for my system, but also at the end of the day, he was still there supporting me, right? And I
Mhm.
think like that was like helping me move through it. Now that that part of the course is, even though with all the judgments, it's like I can detach a little bit from it, but with the things that I need to do on myself, I think it's that. It's just like I find it very hard to just hold myself in any task. And yeah, like now that I say it, like I see that it really like translates to many areas of my life, just like discipline in general. Like for me, always it was very easy to go and teach a yoga class. It's not easy at all for me to go and do a yoga practice. It's like no, no. But but it's like there's the naturalness of like sharing it with someone else. So yeah, it changes just this thing of holding myself.
It does ring true for how I see myself working since coming out of being part of an organization.
Mm.
It's this like, it's so, well, there's nothing around you at all. There's the systems for accountability aren't there. There's the systems where you felt you were in service, that you would go over and above and you would do more because it was in service of someone else, isn't there. That someone looking for a deadline or something to be produced by a certain time isn't there. It needs to be self-driven. And I think I mistakenly came out of that world thinking without those systems, I had specific skill sets embedded within me, but they were learned and they were adapted to those environments. And now I'm on my own trying to do a similar thing. I struggle in exactly the same way. Turning up for this, I'm like, yes, I know that me and we're going to speak for an hour and a half and wish we were recording, as we do every time. You're showing up, I'm showing up, we're checking in with each other. There's no pressure, but there's the gentle pressure of like, it's a co-creation. Exactly what you said. The other stuff, like, that's why I'm so excited for your course, is getting started on the project that is solo, the brand or methodology or even social media content, like just even starting something and it not being completely perfect. Um, there's no one else to say. It doesn't matter if it's this is the fifth iteration. It looks exactly the same with green lettering as it did with yellow lettering. Just post it. Yeah, like where does this part of you come in and start to develop and start to run personal accountability? You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's also like different layers. It's like one, there's just it just feels more vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because literally you become the only projection board. It's like I said, at least here we're sharing the load. Like if people hate us, they can hate us together. Maybe they'll hate one of us more than the other, but it's like we still can blame it on like, yeah, it was Luis.
Yeah.
I'm great. But it's like you're really fully taking accountability for yourself, which is like it has also the double edge because on one side it's like it's really beautiful that you have absolute creative like freedom, right? It's like I can do whatever I want with that course, and that is exciting. And it's like and I have that part of myself of this is what I want to do. I don't care what anyone else thinks about it. It's like I'm going with it. And then there's just like the fear and shock that comes is like, okay, I'm fully like owning who I am. And then that also means that if people reject me, they're gonna be fully rejecting who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like it's kind of this part, which I know we all do. Well, most people do. at an unconscious level, like it's always safer to play it small, right?
Mhm.
It's like, okay, I'm just
Yeah.
a part of a team. I'm just like this. And then there's also the other thing that I feel it points to something quite beautiful of like we are social beings and we do function better somehow within a structure, within a community. Like there is also beauty in that. So like how can we, or like the questions start arising for me, like how do we find like a balance?
For me, identifying the bits that I rejected that made me not want to work in those systems, but then also recognizing the positives that the systems created for me for where I might lack those natural tendencies to work systemically or linearly, in an openness to collaborate, but more open source. So, like, still have the vision, but bringing in partnerships in network. And I think that's where I've landed most recently is like, there's so many people that I know out there that will be able to, one, understand where I'm coming from and might know the right person to introduce me to an organization where I can test run some of these, new ways of working. Or, and it's what you just said, it's like the beauty of the social networks, the natural formation of people organizing across the globe that happens anyway. It's like thinking outside of the need for this actual organization structure, but taking the good bits of it and like creating that open source yourself and surrounding yourself with the right kind of people. But there's a confidence needed for that. And there's like an integrating of self and worth and moving through, dare I say, shame about because you are vulnerable and you're standing here and it's easy to sell someone else's dream. It's very easy because it's their dream. So if it doesn't, like you said before about accountability, if it doesn't sell well or, the market moves past this great new fandangled thing, it wasn't your baby, it wasn't your idea. But not to poo-poo the entire organization and everything that it provided to you, stand on your own and like pushing forward something that you believe in has so much more weight. It's so much more freeing, but with that freedom comes huge responsibility. And it's like we're talking about balance, it's like balance between freedom and responsibility. And that's like, I mean, who gets that perfectly right? It must be something that constantly goes back and forth. But it's the vulnerability and sharing like your own dream, which is where my perfectionism comes in. Because for a company with their values and the way that we work and what I was bringing to that company in HR, which I was leading, throw together programs, three days. Oh, let's hire, in a specific new way and train all the managers. Great. Let's make a little methodology for it, ways of working, maybe put a policy around it, roll it out, workshops. Easy peasy. Thinking of a way to bring what I would love to bring to the collective from my perspective. It's the same steps to take. It's a different story. So it's like collecting the right people, allowing that the right people will be there to like help push it along as it goes. I think you're one of them for me.
And you are for me.
Hey.
I mean, yeah, I think it's like as I listen to you, like different things come up. And it's like one is like how can we, because it's so clear, right? As you said, it's like I know that I can create this. I've been doing it for 10, 15 years, like even successfully, but I've
Yeah.
created it for someone else. So that kind of creates like a buffer for my self-image, even though it's still painful when we do it for someone else and things don't work out. It's just like, ah, but okay, it's work. It's just work. We kind of can create that like distance, but then it's just like when at the end of the day it's still just work, but it's like we have it so identified with who we are that it just feels so personal, right? It's like if people reject what I'm creating, that feels like they're rejecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels so personally painful because obviously in my case, and I think in the case of a lot of people, there's already a wound. There's already a belief around like not being worthy enough. Because otherwise it could just become like a very interesting game, right? And I see it. I've been trying to start listening to podcasts like from businessmen and just like business people, which is like not at all in my field of interest, or it hasn't been for so long. But it's been very fascinating to enter that world because it's literally just entering into a different consciousness of like, for me, it's not even like possible to think this way. There's like nothing in my system that resonates with it. And there is all these other type of people that is just like it's who they are, and for them it's just like it's a business, it's a game, and if this doesn't work out, it's great because we learn and it's exciting to see the next thing that it's gonna work. And it's just like it really blows my mind because it's like maybe I could learn to see the world like that. Maybe I could learn to perceive what I'm bringing forward in that way of just like a fun experiment of I created this and let's see what the feedback is and how I can grow from it. I still don't have that in like embedded in me so much. So for me it's like I created this and all of me is in it, and if it fails I fail, and end of story, right?
Mhm.
And it just it already becomes so overwhelming for the nervous system. And in there I see like how kind of this we can call it self-sabotaging thing starts. And I think that's where kind of having the other system around you is so powerful, right? Because if it was only up to my nervous system, I would be like, fuck this. This is terrifying. Like there's no space for anything else. I don't know how to do this. And I'm out. Like cancel it all. I'll just continue living the way that I have. And that's the end of the story, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, it sounds very dramatic, but I know we do it.
But
Like
it's dramatic to feel.
it's
Feels
dramatic to
dramatic for your
feel.
system.
Yeah.
Mm.
And but it's like also that interesting thing of there's other ways to perceive it. There's people that can have that very same experience with a completely different mindset. And I'm not denying that maybe those people go through hardship and like grieving around projects that didn't work out. That's not the end of it, right? So it's also in that sense like a training of, hey, you're just doing something and you're not dead. You can do other things. And and that was
Mm.
one layer. And the other thing that was just coming up that I found interesting because we were saying, well, I mean, like what it means to be part of a team, which is quite beautiful because I mean it's quite beautiful and quite messy because again, sometimes your vision can be compromised when you're part of a team, but also like your vision gets reinforced because you have people that have the ability to see things from a different place and like chip in mm, with skills that you don't have, with perspectives that you don't have. And yesterday I was feeling super overwhelmed. I mean, not only yesterday, for a few days. I'm very excited about the course that I created at times, but I'm like super overwhelmed about creating the whole messaging, like doing the land, like the sales page, and just like whenever people ask me, who is this course for? I just go into freeze. And yesterday I was like, well, people have been speaking about this thing that could become my friend. It's like, why don't I just ask Chat GPT? And I was like, you know what? Just do the thing. And I was just like, I didn't want to because there's a part of me that feels resistant of having someone else do my job. But then I was like, but if this is like overwhelming me to the point of paralysis, then why don't you just learn to ask for help? And thank God nowadays, the help just means like go and Google blah, 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 or whatever, Chat GPT, this. And all of a sudden it's like, thank you. I would have never been able to come up with that for myself. And now I feel like, okay, I can be with this because there is also like a pressure as entrepreneurs, which I wouldn't call myself, but okay, I'm trying to create something for myself. There's just like, I have to do everything. I have to be good at everything. I have to do the course content, I have to do the marketing, I have to do, and that's just like, what if I don't have to? What if I can allow myself to receive help? And all of a sudden it's just like, ah, I can do this. This is possible. Thank you, ChatGPT.
I'm delighted that you're pushing something out that I can hopefully support you with, but also the learning from that first like launch sort of thing. The first launch and it not being like the solo only possibility that there ever is, and there won't be iteration two, and like learning from it and like asking for feedback and how did that go, and like allowing it to live its life for the length of time that it's going to live its life until maybe you birth something else. I think that's going to be really fascinating. And I've never been as close to a process like that. So I'm really excited for you too. And I am in the same kind of space. I'm trying to build something. It's infancy stages, but the sharing out and the realizing that you don't need to do everything was just absolutely massive. I was tying myself in knots. I stopped myself being able to take space to even integrate after all this healing with the desire to learn every single thing that I need to learn about how to start a business. Not only did I think I needed to have the idea of what I wanted to bring change and where my impact was, I needed to CEO it. I needed to do the accounts and finances. I needed to understand marketing. I need to understand algorithms. I need to go and market research and look at everybody else. I like signed up to a program that wasn't right for me and all of these things, and in pursuit of success, which put me back probably about 2 months because of that wasn't what was needed in the birthing of this thing at the time. It was looking externally when I needed to be looking internally for like what was actually right for what I was trying to do. So all of that energy and all of that like frothing of the water almost was needed, because now it's settled. I can pick and choose which bits that can be outsourced. I don't need to know that bit. I'm not actually interested in that one bit. Bye. This other bit, these are my skills. This is how I sound. I'm slowly starting to get used to how I sound. Am I a teacher? No, definitely not a teacher. Okay, so it's been helpful to have that delay, that's that false start, which felt like a failure, felt like a massive failure, false start, and then there was more clarity after, because I like because I tried to do everything and failed trying to do everything massively, specifically physically failed to maintain that energy level that was required to try and do everything I was trying to do. Um, big, hard physical lesson, but it was great because I'm really comfortable in the fact that I only need to do my bit and show up for my bit, and I can comfortably know, yeah, I'm going to need some help with like messaging or something. But well, you're saying ChatGPT, run it through that, get a basic outline, and then yeah, you can spend some dollars refining it with a specialist at an appropriate time. So like this, you must do everything, know everything. Kind of, it was a distraction as much as it was like thinking that I was in action. I was in distraction, like just in huge like swells of distraction. So I'm excited by this pared back idea.
Just because of your Scottish English, are you saying distraction or destruction or both?
Oh, both. I said distraction, but it was, yeah, it's both. Definitely both.
I was getting double message. Sometimes I was listening like, yeah, it was such a distraction. I was like, yeah, it makes sense. And then like, it was such a distraction. I was like, yeah, it also makes sense. Which
I
one
think
is
they're
it?
interchangeable. I would say in this, not normally, but I would say in this specific situation, they're interchangeable terms. Definitely. It's we have to go through these experiences, I think, and then we get clarity, and then it seems more simple, which I'm expecting some more layers of fear, like you've just experienced, to come out because I've simplified it and I've got an idea of my role needs to be right now, which feels vulnerable. I'm accountable for just that bit. You've been accountable for the content of your course, you know. Um, so I'm gonna lean on accountability partners for the next phase.
No, absolutely. Like as I'm listening to us, I just feel like, oh wow, this conversation is so important, at least for me, because
Mhm.
it's just like, well, first of all, I'm realizing it's like, well, in a way, I'm just putting it words. It's like our nervous systems are stronger together, just like it just creates like a bigger field to hold more. So I feel like we have entered so much into an era of like you have to do everything, and we don't realize like how sabotaging that is, how overwhelming that is for the system to, like you said, all of a sudden, and like I said, have to become the expert at all of it. And it's just like, I just want from my heart to be able to offer discourse around the nervous system. And then there's just like all these other implications, all these other like fields of action that maybe I wasn't aware of, and all of a sudden feeling like I have to do it all. And it's just like I feel like we reinforce that idea in today's society so much, especially for the entrepreneur again type of person. It's just like you have to learn to do it all. It's like you have to be on social media, you have to learn, like you said, the algorithm, like all this stuff. And it's like all of a sudden something that started with so much joy, enthusiasm, and clarity of like our vision of our gifts, it's just like we start getting like buried under the weight of like all the things we should be able to achieve. And it just comes like I think together with a sort of shame, because this is like so much heightened in our societies nowadays. It's like if I am not able to do all of these things, then I'm a failure, and why am I even trying? So just like even to open up the conversation of like you don't have to do it all, you don't have to hold it all on by yourself. It's like, yeah, it's your vision, it's your project, it's your baby. In even that translates to parenthood nowadays, right? It's like parents feel like they have to do it all on their own, and this is why parenthood is like the hardest it has been, like historically for many years, because it's like before parents used to have a support system. And what
Mhm.
did it say? Like it takes a village. I think that's the saying, right? It's like you would have the neighbors that could support, you would have the aunties, you would have the grandparents, and then it was just like, of course, you are the main caregiver, but it's like inserted within a support system, and you know that it's there to hold you. Like more and more, we have been moving to this very individualistic society of like you do it all for yourself. And it's like no wonder we have are experiencing so much like people experiencing burnout, people living with imposter syndrome, people just like being super confused, because it's like when we feel we have to do it all, it's we're being pulled in 10 different directions. And what does that do? Even just like it just paralyzes us where we are.
Mhm.
So just to say like, and to say to myself is like it's okay to not know how to do it all, and it's definitely not only okay to ask for help, but it's needed.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, then for a lot of us it's like you can say goodbye to many of your dreams because, and maybe there are some other systems that can hold more. I know for myself, and I have this clarity, and I'm just like also leaving shame behind, which is like this is as much as I can give. Like this is like where the boundary is. And after that, I just enter into overwhelm and into perfectionism, because then it's just like too much on my plate. And what am I even doing? And who is this for? And no one's gonna care. Instead of just like really giving space for the joy of it. And I'm not denying like that there is also hardship in it. But I feel like we do place on ourselves like unnecessary pressure to achieve everything. And again, that's why a lot of us are in the state of freeze that we are, when we could really be leaning into our community, into our friendship, like you said, creating accountability, like really looking for solutions outside of ourselves. It's just like, hey, cannot do this. Like, and do you mind looking at this video and tell me what you think, or like, how did this make you feel? And just like expanding, like literally like expanding what we are able to see. And I mean, that's such a beautiful gift of relationship, right? It's like the other person is lending you their eyes to see the world through them. And what a gift. And why don't are we not using that gift a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
And that's my big speech.
Beautiful speech. It's a lot came up there. The willingness to ask for help, shame around asking for help, chronic. We know that. And it's wild because when we have permission to ask for help, i.e., in the structures of regular working environments, it's allowed in certain contexts. But then because of the way that those systems give you merit for your contribution, it becomes super individualistic again, competitive. And then even though there's permission to ask for help, you find that you're getting these, people lone wolfing, struggling to perform because the merit is attached to the performance, and you find people that even have these systems around them starting to ignore parts of the system that could help them and burning out for that reason, because you only get to the top one way in these systems that are feeling pretty outdated now. Then you jump out of them, realize you still need the structure, you're formless, but it's not that type of structure that you necessarily need. The structure can be totally fluid and totally human, based just on a trusting relationship. And like you said before, where you're asking for this person's eyes to look at it, you're also sharing, they're also holding space and sharing their nervous system with you. And if it's a trusted person, their feedback is going to come from the heart and going to be from a good place and be layered with suggestions and support and guidance and coaching to get you to where it needs to be better. You don't necessarily get that in those systems either, which burns people's fingers and makes them turn away from asking for help. Because if you ask someone for help and they've got a similar agenda to you can't necessarily guarantee that help is going to be the correct information or the fastest way to do it, and it's moving out of competition, or not competition. Competition is good. It's moving out of like fear of competition. There's enough for all of us to do what we're trying to do, and that people genuinely do want to help and have it and broaden what they're doing. Because you could ask a friend who the nervous system stuff is really new to, they could gain so much just from getting a sneak peek and helping you with, I don't know, editing, for example. Like your dad's like, oh, look at you knowing all this stuff. But he has witnessed you saying all of this information that he's potentially not heard consecutively in course style format. So like you've gifted him that already. And there's so much in those relationships. And I think hopefully that's where we're both headed, is like moving out of the shame of that and being like, it's everyone is helpful. Everyone has a different genius. Like when you actually talk about it and you share what you're trying to do, someone knows someone. Someone always knows someone. And those will be hopefully the organic opportunities that can like help us on our way. And it's just like trusting that they're there. And again, for me, it's coming back to like the belief in self to move into the discomfort of asking for help, of being seen, whatever the discomfort is. The trust in self to move in there and have some safety in the discomfort, knowing that a failure is fine. A failure is not me. A failure is learning. A failure is future potential extra connection. It's all these things, but it's just so heavy when it's on your own. And I think this whole episode so far is really pointing towards different way of collaborating. For me, it's like collaboration, not reimagined, because I don't think we're really reimagining anything, just to be on brand.
Yeah, we're so special and we're so thinking outside of the box.
And there aren't books on this. There's no books on this. This is
No
completely
one has ever talked about it. Like people before didn't know how to live in community. Only
no,
us.
no one here.
We're
It's
starting the new movement.
that's it. This is our experience of just peeping the head up past the norm, essentially. And some of it'll be old because it's gold, and some of it'll be new because it needs to change. And well, that's all growing, is it? And it's painful. But it's just new ways to collaborate, new ways of thinking about systems and how they interplay together.
And I mean that's so beautiful, right? I mean, so many things as usual are coming in my head. It's like which path of thought should I follow right now? The first thing, and even when you say it earlier, it really like struck with me when we were like, how to make failure safe, because it's just like it's that, right? Like failure could only be failure, like just a stage in growth, but we have literally like equaled failure to, is there a word on safety? Do you say on safety, or that doesn't word does that word doesn't exist? Well, we have
Fail safely. What was your question?
like the word unsafe, does that exist?
Yeah, unsafe.
Okay, so we have equaled failure with unsafety, which is really crazy again, and because we think they're the same thing. They are not, but like our systems are literally like, if I fail, I'm gonna die. This is it. So really start like dissociating these two ideas of like failures over here, and yeah, it's painful. We don't wish it upon anyone from a certain perspective, and at the same time, from another perspective, we could wish it upon everyone, because it's like how beautiful to fail and learn from it, because not everything always is able to succeed, right? Like, and we're like, how wonderful would it be if Hitler had failed from the start? Like that would have
Perfect.
been such a win for the world, right? It's like failure can also be a gift to ourselves, to humanity. But it's like, how do we not equal that again with just like really a threat to our systems? And that's very personal, because we do have like a collective reality around failure and our fear of it, and I think a lot of it is really nourished by the narratives we have, just even what you were saying, like the narratives in the workspace, and just sometimes like this idea of like, how do I, there's no space for everyone, which means that it's great that other people's fail because then I'm here, but if I fail, that's terrible because then I'm buried till the like end of the world, and there's no escaping from that. And there's just like really starting to recognize our own narrative from failure and see if we can have any sort of turnaround around, like about it, and just even in our life, like really recognize failures that ended up in beautiful things. Just like I'm sure everyone has those, but we don't pay attention, right? Because we're just so much in the painful experience of failing. But like, how many times in our lives failing was not a gift? It's just like we never have the full picture because we're so much in our like tunnel vision, which is very much like associated with a fight or flight type of living, just like this is the only thing there is, this is it or I die. And it's like, no, let's come out of that. And it's like, wow, when that dude rejected me, that really sucked. And 10 months down the line, I'm like, thank God, like I dodged a bullet, right? And it's like best failure of my life. Was not able to see it at the moment because I was just like, it's this person or I'm gonna be single for the rest of my life. But again, that was never an objective reality. It was just how each of us was able to relate to something, again, from like a narrative that is already probably pretty embedded in our nervous system. So for each of us, I would say the first line of work, or could be, doesn't have to. It's just like, what is my relationship to failure? What is my narrative around failure? And how can I start like separating all those things that they seem so clearly in my fear that they're the same thing, but they're not at all the same. So I mean, when you said it, I was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty profound because it's just like it's not necessarily unsafe to fail.
Mhm.
It's painful. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable as fuck. But sometimes it's literally a gift. And it's like, in a way, a conversation to life, right? Just like sometimes we fail because it's like, no, that wasn't the direction. It's just like, it's also, again, about creating maybe a narrative that the universe is working in our favor
Mhm.
and that we are loved, which is already a whole topic in itself, right? Mm,
The hindsight thing jumped out at me, you know, the clarity in hindsight, the lessons realized later in not real time, because you're working from a diffuse nervous system, if you're working from maybe a frazzled nervous system, you can't really see the situation for what it is because it's so important and everything's in the line and you've got this like damn story and dynamic playing out that like it's all or nothing thinking because you're so narrow mindset at the time, and that's where hindsight brings so much clarity. But the annoying thing for us is the distance between the situation, the failure, and then the clarity and actually seeing it for its worth. It'd be beautiful to bring hindsight into current sight, like live sight, and have that feel safe to be like, what would I learn if this fails anyway? And like already like push it a little bit, like bring that forward, bring the worst case scenario forward, bring safety in the worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that could happen? Ah, oh, can't think about that. Well, let's make space to think about it in increments or in its entirety, depending on like what you can handle. But like, what does it look like? What does it smell like? What are the experiences? What are the feelings? The judgments, the physical reaction? What emotions are becoming stuck? Like, but what remains? And like that analysis would be, is quite heavy to go into the worst case scenarios analysis, but like, does that pull some potential clarity from hindsight into the now? Not that you're trying to predict the future, because whatever will happen the way it needs to happen. But if you can, because you were talking about safety, is if you think about our systems, things don't have to be happening right now for us to have the reaction to them. We react to the past constantly. We react to the future constantly. Um, so if hindsight is a gift of the future, then can we try and pull some of that into the now by pretending that it's happening and that it's already passed? And what would we have learned in that difficult space, in that uncomfortable space, which I think is not commonly done. It's probably done by a lot of successful people. Um, and I know it's done at an organizational level. You do, you know, for big strategic projects, you do analyze different avenues and things. But like, I'm talking like this whole thing fails from an individual entrepreneur point of view, where it is based on feeling, and that's what our conversation's been about, is like the feeling inhibiting us from making the move in the first place, getting the feeling and the safety in the system to try. Then the failures, as they come, which they will come, hopefully are like, yes, okay, learn that, move on, like the company does, because the company's learned to do that. But the company is not one person. The company is a collective with contingencies and allowances and people relinquishing control if they're run well, um, to make the best decisions and learn from the failures. So, like, how do we squeeze that into a personal process and way of learning to propel us forward?
no, and I think what you say it's so profound at many levels, right? the first one that comes is like, it's literally what you're saying to me sounds literally like trauma work.
Mhm.
It's just like, how do you bring an experience from the past that is just like so charged because there was no context for it into the present moment and into the safety of the present moment? It's just like, with even changing the meaning around it. And of course, it's going to be different from the trauma that we might be speaking about. Let's just say, like, let's just give a lighter example. For instance, like heartbreak. It's just like in that moment, the system can literally experience it as trauma, just like, I'm left alone, I'm abandoned, I'm like, how am I gonna survive? Then 10 months, 10 years down the line, you look at your life and it's like, this is amazing. I have the most amazing partner. I could have never dreamed about like such a state of whatever story you want to share, and just be like, really bring that moment that may still be carrying some charge, and just like place it in the safety of the present. And it's like, hey, actually we are safe right now. It's just like we thrived from this situation, and it's like from that the systems start building resilience, right? But we rarely do that. We rarely start this cross referencing of experience and of life. We just like leave them. And I say this because I know I've done it, right? And I do it very much, this very biased perception of reality of like, poor me because I've been rejected by this and this person, and this all means that I'm a rejectable person, that I have no worth. And it's just like, maybe you start changing the narrative from, oh, the rejection, and start going backwards and be like, oh, thank God for this rejection. Yeah, what a redirection, as they say. And it's like, oh, and this one, oh, I see exactly what happened. And then from there, it's like, really the body and the nervous system and the beliefs can start like reattuning to, oh, actually, those were all very amazing gifts from the universe that I was not able to receive in that moment. And then really feel it into our systems like, oh, that's over. Thank God I'm out of that relationship. Thank God I quit that job. Thank God they fired me from that job. I mean, whatever. It's like, really, like you said, giving the, like, the in reverse type of processing of experience to see like how much a lot of those things have actually brought us into expansion. And maybe sometimes no, also, I'm not saying just like, oh, everything's like unicorns and butterflies or whatever, but it does like come across as profound to me, as a way to start challenging already like very heavy narratives that we have built around failure for ourselves. And then the
Mhm.
other thing that you were saying is like, I'm reading this book where she speaks about like how like high level athletes, they work a lot with visualization. And she was saying like, for instance, that Michael Phelps, or however you say that, this like swimmer, he would work with visualization, but he would work exactly as you were saying with both scenarios. Like he would do a visualization of like, I do everything amazing and I go and win. And he will also work with the scenarios where things don't go the way that he wanted them, where there's some challenges, where there's some things. And that was so important because that was also what was building resilience in his system. Because sometimes this like type of woo woo thing around manifestation is just telling us like, just visualize you in this beautiful state that you want to be, and then this is like what's gonna bring it forward, or gonna bring it into your life and your experience. And then it's just like, but if we're only relating to the beautiful and the good, how can we prepare our systems to still recognize the beautiful and the good, even when the circumstances are not going our way? Like, how can we really wire ourselves in a way that we can know how to work around challenges, and just not seeing the first challenge as a sign of something bad? So I think again, this exercise is so profound, not from a fatalistic type of view of like, oh, let's just think about what the worst thing that could happen and just like die out of fear because maybe whatever's gonna come across. Is like, no, like you said, it's like I work with it to recognize the resilience that's already in my system, because that gives me the freedom to be with all the possibilities, right? And that's
Mhm.
amazing. I much rather that than just like, oh, everything's always gonna work my way. What's my way anyway? What do I know?
First thing, I love the fact that there was something similar in a book that you read, because I was doing the usual dissecting exactly what I'd said instead of listening to initially what you said in response, and was thinking, what a load of shit. But I have done this before in relationship. I haven't applied anything that I just said to how I feel and where I'm at with business, but I'm really, really inclined to do exactly that after this and run an experiment and just see how safe it feels for me to start building resilience in that way without this fear. And you touched on it at the end, which is why I was like, two things: manifestation and us getting into this space of feeling that it's like people who try not to feel their feeling, the negative feelings that don't exist, right? It's like being daring enough to go there, but you're not actively trying to manifest the failure. And if you do manifest the failure, then you believed a lot more in the failure than you did in the success, which is the lesson in the first place. Oops. um, it's finding the safety in being there in increments, in that being a resilience building process. I'm really interested to play around with that on my own, but also being witnessed by somebody else in a space, because there could be potency there, especially when you're bringing in actual visualization and the emotion of it and tying the heart to the head, and how all of these miracles happen on earth, and probably how a lot of catastrophes happen on earth as well. It's again, it's allowing of both, and then maybe finding neutrality with it. So with the resilience, it becomes a neutrality, and then it is maybe a bit of a hack to like apply elsewhere. So I would love to practice what we preach so far.
And then just this thing came across that I was just like, because as you said, maybe we believed way more in our failure than we did in our success, and that really struck me, because it's like that's me. Like one of my friends would literally tell me like, you know how to manifest your nightmares, and I literally have a nightmare, and then the next day it would happen, right? And I would just be like, "What the fuck?" But then this thing of, it's just that we believe way more in our failure than we believe in our success, and then it brings like kind of a contradiction of what I've said, because actually some of us are just equaling failure to safety.
Mm.
Earlier I was speaking about like how we can feel safe in the failure, but actually it's like maybe that's exactly what's happening. I feel safer in failing than I feel in expanding and succeeding. So that's why I keep repeating this thing. And
Mm.
that's the thing that we like, a lot of times we don't ask ourselves, right? Because it's like, that's dumb, how would I want to fail? It's like, well, you don't logically or cognitively want to fail, but your nervous system literally feels safer in what you perceive as failure than it does in a state of expansion. And it's like, if you can really just start working from that recognition, that is really moving already with the wisdom of your system, instead of just like pushing against it because whoever told you like, oh no, you have to do this, you have to succeed, you have everything in your power to do it. Like, it's, again, I think it's profound. And for me, as I say it and as I recognize that, it's like, maybe that's what's coupled in my system. It is
Mhm.
safer to fail than it is to succeed. And then I just keep like rebuilding and feeding the narratives that will take me back to that place.
So I definitely think it's not that I'm perfect at everything that I've done. Maybe I've been very, very specific in seeking out things that I'm going to be good at initially, and been fearful of trying things that I thought I might fail at. So like there hasn't been a lot of taste of successful failure, I think, in my life. And there's been a collection of personally perceived failures, I would say, in the past 12 months along, like moving on from work, relationship things, relational across kind of all facets of relationship, not just like love, um, and condensed like perceived failings into a short period of time. And I've certainly realized in that space, because of the reactions and then the integration from the learning, that I don't have a high tolerance and a high resilience to it. I don't. And I'd love to biohack that and work out how I build that pronto so that I can start with iteration one and maybe fail and then move on to iteration two and actually be doing something that I want to do for work that will serve other people.
And I like that. This idea of successful failure.
Yeah.
Because it's so true. It's like, I mean, I'm the same. I remember I saw a meme once around like, and again, I'm like a Virgo rising, and it's just like Virgos whenever they're not immediately good at something. It's just like never again, right? It's like if I didn't nail it the first time, like don't even dream about me having a relationship with this thing. It's like I'm either naturally good or this is not a thing that I want in my life, which is actually, I mean, to give it a word that is a bit extreme, but it's quite toxic because, like you
Mhm.
said, it's never building resilience within our system. But the other thing that was coming that I find also like could be quite an interesting exploration to take is because I also feel it's quite impossible to have lived a life where we have not built resilience at any level. So also just to really bring awareness to the parts of our lives where we have built resilience, whether we want it or not, because sometimes also we're so very good at our own bias. But like, oh, but actually, this thing, I don't know, I was bullied at school and that made me really resilient around this. Or I was like, my parents were not that very present and that made me very resilient in that way to also just give ourselves to somehow celebrate the things that we have built resilience around, because otherwise probably we just wouldn't be alive. If we didn't have resilience around anything, we would have died at one point. So just like to give it both, to if we're the type of person that just doesn't feel comfortable with anything where we're not like natural shining stars at, just like start being the clumsy one at the whatever. The other day, I went to a twerking class.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it on.
I mean, fucking horror, right? That's like, of course. This is the worst nightmare for my system. Just like looking at myself in the mirror, like trying to follow a choreography. I like hate it. I cognitively hate it, but there's just like there's something inspiring about just like putting myself in this situation that I so despise and just maybe seeing it with a little bit of humor and there's a challenge there for me and not just going into a whole story of like, oh my god, you're just this deformed being that cannot move itself and just like forget about ever being sexy or anything. Just like, okay, I went, I did the thing, I'm terrible, and god knows what happens if I signed up for 12 more classes, right?
Wow.
So maybe we should create, I've been thinking about it, we should create like a club, like the failures club, where we just like celebrate each other's failures instead of celebrating each other's success. And it's just like, yeah, you did this and you failed. Good sport, just like really
I like it.
holding each other in that exploration of how terrible we could be at something.
I actually really like that idea. I like it for like any community to have a space that they open that is not what you'd expect. It's like finding the gold in the things that you don't think they exist in, the failures, the embarrassments. in helping other people build you up when you're not able to build the resilience from that yourself, having the community build you up from that. Like a wacky call where you're like, bring your worst, let's go. It's again background to like other people holding community style resistance, resilience, power. It's just building up from that, is it? So it's a new paradigm. Yeah, I love it. Are we
So,
starting that call? Is that what this call is, or
this is where we were getting at. Oh, join our failures club.
yeah, free to fail. We'll call that. This is the
I
free
mean,
to fail
obviously,
episode.
this is the free to fail or free to be a failure podcast, but yeah, I mean, I think we should definitely start it, get it going.
If we get one thumbs up to say that they would, if you're interested in sharing your feelings in a ridiculous way, we'll make a space for it. I'm so here for that.
Yeah, hashtag I'm a failure.
Mhm.
And we just like really change our relationship to it. I like it.
Yep. Reclaim the word. I love it.
All
I think
right.
that's a really nice closing thing, is maybe we open that space. Does it exist already? If it does, let us know. If it doesn't, here you can be vague, you can be shamed, you can be flaky as fuck, and you can fail safely.
Great. Really the education that the newer generations need.
Yeah, a bit of realism. Why not?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we made our argument.
Yeah.
Just like if you just presented like that without context, people would be like, who are these people? It's like, in this course, we teach you how to be ashamed, how to be failure, how to, it's like, we know that. It's part of the human experience. But it's like, but do we really?
This is a collaboration between Jimena, Louise, and ChatGPT. For now.
Not so far, but maybe.
Maybe.
Could be. So far, ChatGPT has not been used within the context of this podcast.
But yeah, it's not used in this. Although that's actually not true. I used it to tell me if I was talking more than you from the transcript.
Okay, I think like this is our closest thing. Let's just make a guess. I think that I spoke more in this one.
There's never been one that I thought I didn't speak more. And so far, there hasn't been one that I didn't speak more. It was marginal last time, like really, really marginal, but I don't think you spoke more than me. I don't shut the hell up.
Okay, we'll find out. It's a bet.
It's a bet.
To close, what is your takeaway from your biggest takeaway from this conversation?
That's a really good question. My biggest takeaway is I didn't think this was going to come up out of the conversation, is what I want to jump into is the scenario where I'm finding safety in failure through working with myself and my systems, and then potentially with you or someone else where they're holding space to investigate that as well. That I didn't expect to come out, but I'm excited because, well, maybe we'll see some tangible results and maybe we will fail. Who knows? But yeah, that's it for me. What about for you?
I mean, I think like towards the end also, I mean, there were many, but like this part that I was just like, oh fuck, I really feel like I'm safer in failing than I am in succeeding. And that maybe from there I build a whole reality. So it's just like how how can I exit that narrative? And let the thing be what it is, right? Maybe it still will be a failure, but not just because it's like I'm trying to control everything so it doesn't like just do what it's meant to do in the world or in my life. So yeah, that.
That is profound as well. And I think you've got so much opportunity there.
Bye.
What do we normally say?
I have no idea. You just do the
For us.